Hey everyone, Splash here, and I think it is time to revisit a past project and finish it up. So let's see which one we're going to do today. All right, I believe it's this one right here, the Ford GT. Appears we left off step 32. And there's the interior, and I think I had started step 32, I just didn't finish it. And I think the rest of the pieces are up here. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna have to remember. Now we get to try to find all the boxes. I think there were, I'm just off the top of my head, I think there were 66 steps to this kit. So I should have a pile of boxes somewhere. I dug out all the boxes. And if I said 66 steps earlier, I was really mistaken. It appears to be 110. So all the boxes are accounted for, and what I think is the display case. So let's go ahead and get started. Did this kit really cost that much? Yes, it did. Did I do the math ahead of time to know what the total cost was going to be? No, I didn't. Did I do some mental math to put myself in the ballpark? Yes, I did. Do I now trust my mental math? No, I don't. This is a very expensive kit. Now keep in mind it is a monthly subscription kit, but still, total cost is total cost. And I will also mention that I was about maybe 25% through the kit, and that month's box had a notice in it saying they were increasing the price $1 per stage, which equated to about $80 more. And did I really want to cancel when I only have 25% of the kit? No, I didn't. Now, to be fair, I was going to try a DeAgostini kit at some point. I had not tried one prior to this one. And I loved the Ford GT. At the time, they were also offering the YZR, so I did both of them on a monthly subscription. Now, moving forward, would I continue to buy DeAgostini kits? At their current price points, no, I would not. In this video, I'm going to highlight some of the positives and some of the not so positives. I did enjoy the kit for the most part. I did accidentally, all on my own, no fault of DeAgostini's, I destroyed one part and I didn't even use it. I thought it was that bad. And yes, I do show it in the video, so you'll get to see me make a big mistake. Well, if I'm honest, I made two mistakes. One was actually destroying a piece, which you'll see. The other was I did not run the wiring correctly for the lights. And so we're not going to see the lights actually work in this video. I do get the sound, but I didn't get the lights to work, and I just lost track of the wiring. And I will show you one of the reasons why, which I think is very applicable to the assembly guide. I did not like the flow of a monthly subscription. I felt like each month you were getting some smattering of parts that may or may not be related to each other. And one of the things that really started to drive me crazy about this kit is you would do things that were sort of out of order and make them more difficult. For example, in this particular segment, I'm putting in the speaker and the circuit board and plugging in, I think these are little JST connectors. But I've already done the interior, so I've turned this over. Now I'm pressing down on the interior trying to put in this circuitry. It would have been so much easier to do that first and then put the interior in. So this was much more difficult than I think it should have been. One of the things I can say about these kits is they go to great lengths to provide crystal clear instructions. Not only do you get the name of each part, you get the name of the subassembly, you get visual and written instructions, which makes me think I must have done something wrong, because this was just way too difficult. And I don't know if it was just maybe the angle of the screw or which direction, I don't know, but I got it done. And just for the spirit of full disclosure, I did put a little bit of thread lock on it, just because it just looks a little, just maybe a little wobbly, and I sure don't want that screw to drop out. I am also a little concerned about when it comes time to put the tires on. I think it would be much easier to put them on while the wheel is off of the vehicle, but the instructions have us attaching it and then putting this on. And this is hard as a rock, so we'll have to either heat it with water or a heat gun. And I just really don't want to wrestle it while it's mounted on the kit. But I'm also a little afraid to put it on now, deviating from the instructions, in case there is some reason why they don't have you do it just yet. Also, as most subscription-based models are, they send you a box every month. And our very first box had one wheel. Now we're up to step 46, 47 or so, and we've gotten a box with 2 tires and another wheel. And we will be mounting these tires per this box if I choose to do it that way. But I would rather do all 4 tires at once if I'm going to have to heat them up. Now, because I took so much time in building this model, I've since received all the boxes. So I can go forward and pull out the tires and wheels and do it then. But I think I'm going to try to stick with the way it was supposed to be and just do the steps as outlined. Oh wait, I put that Loctite down there. Well, let's just see if I'm stronger than Loctite. So I did not use any Loctite on the top here. Oopsie. All right. Oopsie. All right, as I said, I put Loctite here, so it's just spinning. All right. So all right. I want to add a little commentary here. The instructions aren't crystal clear, and I'm making some educated guesses here. One of the things that's really bothering me at this point is we haven't been supplied a battery or told about a battery and have tested this before we're putting it all together. And you may say, well, just go look ahead and find out, or get a battery and test it, which really I should do. But keep in mind, this is a monthly subscription, and if I were assembling this every month, I wouldn't have that yet. If I'm following the instructions that I'm given each month, this is how it would go. And I'm sure that testing it and listening to it is probably all part of the final presentation, would be my guess. So we're going to do that, and it may not work out for us. If some of these aren't long enough, or I haven't threaded them through the right places, perhaps I could get some jumpers. The only thing I'm really worried about is that wire for the speaker, because all of this is going to be relevant if we damage that speaker wire, and that probably would require some disassembly to fix. But again, this is a monthly subscription, and this is supposedly all I would have at this point. So let's keep going. This is the first part of the rant. So you see here in step 54-4, we're assembling the first part of the radiator, and it says, noting the small pin in one corner that ensures correct orientation of the parts. Okay, now in step 55-2, again we get a similar message. The radiator has a locating pin that fits into the grill to ensure correct alignment. Okay? All right. We're all on the same page? This is how the radiator assembly with its front guard should look once anchored to the chassis. Okay. View of the parts on the model. Okay. Well. Which is correct? Should the lamp be in the upper orientation or in the lower orientation? But it doesn't really matter because I assembled it using the pins to ensure correct alignment. So my lamp's going to be in the upper position, whether that's correct or not. Now for the second rant, which is a two-part. The first one is, given the cost of the kit, I think some of these parts are not detailed enough, especially in color. If you look at these radiators, it's just a silver rectangle basically, and I did add some Tamiya panel accent liner to the radiator, which once installed it actually looks pretty good. It does add that contrast. But as you watch the video and we get to the engine parts,
I mean, even the belts are just molded and all coated in silver. There really isn't any contrast, there isn't any color, and I certainly would have expected a little bit more given, again, the cost of the kit. Part B. I feel like we should have been told what batteries we needed and a wiring diagram, and we should have hooked all of this up and tested it long before we got this far in assembly.
So I'm holding the camera, so it may be a little jiggly. I apologize, but I want to see where that accelerator pedal is and see if we can get some sound. Oh, I made a big mistake. I was finishing attaching the tubing off camera, and I put a little bit of thin CA around the connections here because I just do not want these popping off again later, and I still have to attach the other end. I set it down to pick up my accelerator and sprayed it, not realizing that the CA ran down the tubing. I don't usually use CA that thin, and so I sprayed the accelerator, and this is what I have now. That looks great. I'm so pleased. So I've made an executive decision. I'm not going to use the distributor. I'm going to take it off. We're just not going to, I just don't think it's going to look good, and I think it missing will be less noticeable than actually seeing this. So I'm on step 91, and it references I need 2 parts from step 1, so I went back, and I need that 1F and 1G, which says store the pieces supplied with this stage for later use. I don't know where they are.